you! Have you ever wanted to mod Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite? I mean, who the hell would take the time to make a video guide on how to rip the game's assets, install all the needed tools and plugins, perform everything you need to do in Blender, and then for the finale, get it all in Unreal and cooked as a packaged mod? Come on, I'd love to see that poor sucker's face when he finds out he has to do that. No. You motherfuckers. You mother... So to get started, you'll need the following tools: DFP Slayer to decrypt the base pack file for MVCI, Repack to unpack the decrypted file as well as pack your mod when you're finished, UModel to actually view and export your mesh and textures, Blender 3.6 or really any 3-point version, but I use 3.6 because it's, it's fine. The GLTF plugin for Blender that Rin made, as well as Rin's custom Unreal Engine 4 build specifically made for MVCI editing. One thing I will note is that you will have to follow the steps that Rin has linked in order to actually view the base editor link. If not, when you go to click it, you'll end up getting a 404 error. One tip that I can give you is that if you did follow the guide exactly, but you still don't see the website itself, check your email for an invite from Epic Games, and once you actually accept it, then you'll be able to see the site and download it. Now that you have everything set up, it's time for step 1, installing the Blender plugin. To do this, open up Blender and then navigate to the Edit tab on the top left of Blender and scroll down until you see Preferences. Head to the add-on options and click on the Install button. From here, you want to go to where you downloaded the GLTF plugin, but make sure that you did not extract the actual folder, that you left it in the compressed folder that you found it or when you downloaded it. From here, you want to search for the GLTF and disable the default Blender plugin that it uses, and instead, you want to only tick the box for the Unreal plugin that you just installed. Great, now it's time to push Blender to the side and try getting into the game files. MVCI as an Unreal game stores its data in a pack file. Capcom has encrypted these files, so we will have to decrypt them ourselves. To decrypt the pack, it is as simple as bringing in the DFP Slayer exe into the Marvel vs. Capcom pack folder. Once you do that, drop the Windows No Editor pack onto the Slayer exe and it will begin to decrypt the pack. To extract the decrypted files, it's as simple as using Repack to unpackage the main pack file. Easiest way to do this is to rename the pack something as simple as marvel.pack.decrypted. Once doing so, you will want to then use the Repack's unpack code, which would be repack space unpack space the name of the decrypted file. So in this case, it would be repack space unpack space marvel.pack.decrypted. Paste the code in the command window and you will see that it will begin to grab all of the files from the decrypted pack. To view the contents of what's going on in there, we will use UModel. Be sure when you launch the program to specify where the unpacked files are and to override the game detection and to instead make it Unreal Engine 4 and the version 4.15. From here, you will see a bunch of folders that you can get into, but for now we just want the mesh. So go to the Kara folder and you will see a bunch of hex numbers. In order to know which character is which, take a look at the notepad included in the guide and you will be able to find out which character belongs to what hex code. For the purposes of this tutorial, I will be doing a Spider-Man mesh, so I am looking for folder 00D. Once located, you can go into the folder and access the mesh and see the textures. To export this, right-click on the main hex folder and hit export. A window will pop up. Choose where you want to export the assets to, as well as making sure you're exporting as a GLTF for the meshes and TGA for the textures. Confirm your options and you've got exported models. Now it's time for Blender. There are some things we will have to do before messing with stuff like modeling, so first things first, go ahead and import the GLTF file you just exported. You'll see a mesh and its armature, which are these little pointy things. From here, I'm going to go a little slow since it's kind of weird with what you have to do. First, select your armature in the mesh viewer. Next, look over to the right to the scene collection section and open up the mesh's hierarchy. Double click the name of the first bone, which is Y-null, and then move your mouse and enter edit mode. Select the bone and with your mouse in the mesh viewer, hit delete on your keyboard. Confirm you're deleting a bone and from there, rename the yellow armature man to the deleted bone name. So after that, your Blender should look like this. From here, switch back to the object mode and make your way to the scene properties. Here, you'll want to go to the units section. By default, Blender is in metric, so what you'll want to do is change the scale from 1 to 0.01 and hit enter. After that, you'll want to select both the mesh as well as the armature. Hit S on your keyboard and type in 100 to scale it to 100. Hit enter and you'll have scaled up the model. Make sure to press Ctrl+A and select the All Transform option to properly apply the change. Now that you've done that, you've set up the model properly. From here is where you can make edits to the base mesh or, of course, bring in a new model to import. For this tutorial specifically, I'm going to be using a Miles Morales model from the Spider-Man PS5 game. Now, I'm not going to go into detail on how to actually rig models in this tutorial as it would make the video longer than it needs to. However, what I can do is point you to a video that goes over the rigging method that I use in a super simple and fast way. One thing I will tell you about rigging is that when you're bringing in a new model, you'll want to try your very best to line up the model to the original as much as you possibly can. That means if the waist is higher on the MVCI model, then use the new model skeleton to bring it up. And then you can keep adjusting from there so that the arms, the legs, the head, and the body all look somewhat similar to the MVCI proportion. You can see in this video, I really use the skeleton in order to change the model's proportion to fit Spider-Man's in the game more. If I hadn't, then it wouldn't have looked really natural at all and the rigging would have been absolutely terrible, as well as a multitude of other issues. Once you've rigged or done whatever you needed to do to your model, it's time to export. But before we can do that, we need to make sure we do some organizational / last minute adjustments. You'll want to combine all of your meshes together into one mesh. To do this, select all of your mesh pieces, right click and select join. From there, you'll want to name the new mesh to the original MVCI mesh, so in this case I would name it to 00D. Next, head to the material tab and you will see a list of all of your model's materials that it uses. The game will only read materials that are listed as the following: mat_etc and then a random number of your choosing, so make sure that your models follows that naming convention as well. Be sure that your armature modifier is linked to the MVCI's armature, and from here, in the collection window, select your mesh, then control click your armature, which is labeled as Y-null, right click, and in the parent tab, use the with empty groups option. Then drag your mesh into the Y-null sequence and you should end up with something that looks like this. Y-null as the main starter, the armature, the mesh with both itself and the vertex group, which is the triangle with the circles, renamed to 00D or whatever your hex name is. From here, just select both the mesh and the armature and you're good to export as an FBX. Be sure to apply these settings on export. Selected objects only the armature and the mesh, smoothing set to face, uncheck add leaf bones, and do not bake the animation. Save it as the model's hex name and then you're set to move on to the Unreal Engine. To find the custom Unreal Engine launcher, you'll want to navigate to where you extracted the MVCI Unreal 4 RAR folder. From here, go to Engines, Binaries, Windows 64, and scroll till you see Unreal Engine 4. Once launched, you will be asked to open up a project, and from here you want to open the MVCI project that is located in the MVCI folder. When you open the project up for the first time, you're going to be met with a lot of files to look at, and it'll be very intimidating. But good luck for you, dear viewer. You don't need literally any of that shit. So go ahead and click on the character tab, and then from there right click on the 006 folder and delete all of its content. From here, you'll want to right click and make a new folder structure. So the first folder will be called the hex number of your character. Then enter that folder and make another folder named mesh. Then do the same process one last time and make a folder titled generated. Now you have the proper setup for folder structure. From here, select your model as well as its textures and drag them into the content browser tab on the bottom, or you could just use the import button and a window will pop up for settings. The main things here is that you want to make sure that the skeletal mesh and import mesh are checked. You want to import normals and tangents, create a physics asset, convert scene, and finally you want to import the materials. From here, you'll see that you have 3 files relating to your model, your materials, and your textures. Select everything that isn't your mesh and move, not copy, it one folder back to the mesh folder. Go into your mesh folder and from there you can start assigning the textures that are there into its proper materials. To do so, delete the default param white node and right click in the window. Type parameter and search for the 2D option. From here, you can select your texture and apply it to the material. For some, this will be a little confusing, which is why we have the benefit of viewing and having the model in Blender to apply the textures beforehand to see where it should go in Unreal. If you don't know what node your texture map should go into, I know it's kind of self-explanatory, but it's hard to know what to put where if one, I can't see the actual texture itself, and two, it might be one that's unorthodox. But the benefit of that is you have Google. So if you do not know what a texture should do, and if you know the label name of it, then look it up on Google and most likely somebody will already have asked the question and have the answer. After you've done that, you can save the material and close out using the small X at the top. From here, you will repeat the process for all the materials until you finish them all. Next, select all of your materials and right click. Then you'll want to make a new material instance. Once you have done that, go back to your generated folder and double click on your mesh. Assign the material slots to their corresponding material instance, and I'll repeat myself, you want to set the material instance you just made, not the base material that you put the node stuff in. And then go ahead and save the mesh. From here, just be sure to hit save all at the bottom and then you can cook content for Windows. The first cook will usually take some time, but once it is done, to find it, go to the main MVCI Unreal editor, then go MVCI, saved, cooked, Windows No Editor, and there you will find an MVCI folder. Copy that folder that's under Engine, and that is the exported folder. Now it's time to repack. Start off by making a new folder and call it whatever you'd like. From there, click into the folder and paste the MVCI folder you previously copied. From there, click into the folder and delete any files that are outside of the content folder. Continue towards the mesh folder, and once you are there, delete the skeleton and the physics asset files. From there, just make your way back to the main repack folder. As mentioned earlier, there is now a repack.bat that can also work with the repack.exe. What this .bat will do is instead of having to input a line of code to tell it what to pack it into, you can just drag and drop the folder with the name of the new mod into the .bat and it will convert it automatically to a _p.pack file. Once it's all packed up, you can then copy the new pack file and head over to MVCI's pack folder. Here you want to create a new folder titled ~mods and paste your new pack file inside of that folder. And hey, look at that, congrats! You actually modded Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite and imported your first model. Good job! I hope that I've helped you as much as I possibly could. I've tried to make this as simple as possible for the beginners to be able to understand, or even if you're just coming back into Unreal modding to be able to understand the process for specifically Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. But until then, I've been Zeno, your residential time god, signing off.